Good morning. This is Barb from Random Crafty Acts. This is a very different video from what I usually do. I am doing this for someone on, excuse me, on the craft making community who says that she has a big shop, but she hasn't been able to find videos that seem to help her stack what they refer to as the sandwich. Okay, so the very first thing I want to say is I am not affiliated with any of these companies. Okay, I don't. I have a Sizzix because that's what I bought when I started in this 5 years ago. The first one I bought was the great big one, and then I was gifted this one. This is the fold-away. I don't know that they even make this one now. The really cool thing about this one is that these little things pull up. I need to make sure I'm in frame because I've got a new setup here. Okay, yeah, so I could shove things down in there, and then I'm not going to do it right now because it sticks. But this pulls out, like just releases from here, and this pulls up this way, the other one pulls up that way, and then you've got something that's basically this size. That made it very, and then you turn this so that it folds in here, and it has made this very easy to store in a smaller space. Okay, I use it because I do A2 cards, and this measurement is 6 1/4. Okay, so most of what I run through here is 4 or 5 inches, and that works. Okay, all right, but again, I am demonstrating this only because this is what I have. Okay, all right, so we don't really need the machine at this, so I'm going to set this over here, and then I'll run a couple of things through just so that you have an example. And I just realized my speaker wasn't, so I hope that was working. Sorry. Like I said, this is a new setup in my craft room, and I'm still trying to get everything set the way I want it. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right. They come with a variety of these. This one is the standard platform. I think I have something that's referred to as a magnetic platform, which is bigger and heavier. Okay. All right. Typically, when you get ready, you would have 2 plastic mats. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is how warped this one has gotten. That's because you're basically putting it on here. You put your paper in here, and you put your die with the cutting edge facing down, which means since this one is so warped, that's the one I was putting on the bottom. And then you lay this one on top, okay, and you run it through the machine, all right, which is a hand crank. All right, if for some reason that's not thick enough, they sell these. They're called the thin die adapter. You can use a couple of pieces of cardboard or several pieces of cardstock. It's basically a shim, okay? All right, here's what went wrong for me, and that is even flipping them and changing them and doing all the things that I could find that you were supposed to do. I can't even begin to tell you how many of these I bought. I mean, I had a whole stack of them. I read somewhere that you could put them in the oven in a pan and heat them and they would flatten back out. But that didn't work for me because I discovered these. All right, again, I am not affiliated with scrapbook.com, but scrapbook.com is the only place I've been able to find these. There are 2 things about these that make a really big difference. One, they replace the bottom cutting plate, all right? I put this on top of the shim, okay? I put the paper here. I put the die here. I put a clear plate on the top, and I'm going to go ahead and run this through just so you can see. Okay, and again, I'm doing this for the lady who said that. All right, and you'll feel it move through. Okay, all right. Okay. I like this because this is a nested die and it's got the stitching on it. Okay? All right. In general, you should, if you're doing like 4 or 5 things that you're going to die cut at the same time, you should keep flipping this, which will help keep it flat. Also, I'm not good at taking mine in and scrubbing it afterwards, but supposedly if you scrub it, these are little teeny tiny pieces of paper, threads of paper that have gotten work down in there. All right, it will start to warp a little. Here is the other thing about this, and it actually works. Okay, you take a heat gun, I lay this down on a table, I take the heat gun and I run the heat gun over it until this gets hot. I don't know what material this is, okay, but once it gets hot and it gets soft, then I just lay these things together, okay, and I put mine underneath here to help press it down, and then as it cools, it actually does flatten back out. Okay, and I didn't believe that when I first read it, but it actually works. All right, here's the next thing that to take into consideration. I use this when I'm using an embossing folder. Now, embossing folders are different weights, okay, and it depends on how thick the embossing folder is as to what you have to do with. This is referred to as a sandwich, by the way. Okay, and so for me, I have to take this out, put this in, and the other thing that we all know about the Big Shot is don't force this. If you start to put this through and it feels like it's sticking, if you're embossing, the big clue is to shift this a little bit to the side, which will not affect what's happening inside the embossing folder, but it will make it easier on the rollers that are inside here. And if you feel like you're not getting a good enough impression, you can crank it back and run it through again. Same thing with dies. Okay? And then you get your embossed. All right? A couple of other things about working with this. There are some people who have said it depends on where you buy your dies. Some of the dies that are really thin, you may have to run through a couple of times, and that has to do with how this edge is here, which is basically the cutting edge. The other thing is if your paper is really thin, most of what I'm working with is, it's not photocopy weight. The heaviest photocopy paper I've got is 24 pound. If you work with something, I mean, even like the 60 pound or the scrapbooking paper weight, most of the time this will work. Okay, occasionally I have run into dies that just don't want to cut even when I'm using this. So there is one thing I have. This is a precision base plate. I don't know if this one came from Stampin' Up. I don't know if they even still, if you can even find these. But in that case, then it's this, and then this, your paper, then this, okay? and I would try it, and if I feel like I'm not getting enough traction, then I would start by putting the shim back in place. Okay, this is a hard surface, and it helps put something against the back of the paper so that it will cut better. Okay, I'm gonna pause this just a second. Okay, these are all of my Big Shot supplies. Let me get, again, get this in frame. Okay, I bought these. These are supposed to be like magnetic sheets. They don't work. I couldn't get them to work for me. Those were sticky sheets that are only in there because they fit in this box. Same thing. This was like a thin piece of plasticky stuff that I put in there in case I needed a shim. This is a metal shim. Again, I don't know where I got it. This is what a magic mat looks like when you first get it before it gets all dirty and used. Okay. All right. That's the magnetic shim for the thing I couldn't get to work. There were people who said it would. All right, this is what my Sizzix pads look like. This is the magnetic platform. I haven't had this out in a long time because I just don't. Okay, feels like that does work. The thing it won't work against, though, is when you put your magic mat on it. Okay, but, and those are my Sizzix platform. Sizzix, so I was buying these in multiples and just burning through them. Okay, repack this. The reason I got this was you could lay it on top of the magic mat and then lay this here, and it would help hold the dies down. Again, these were really inexpensive. And as I said, I didn't really have any good luck with them. I take advantage of any box that looks like it will help me store something. Okay, so we set those out of the way. Okay, I don't want to knock Scrapbook.com. They're a wonderful company. They sponsor Cards for Kindness, so I'm really a major supporter of. I mean, I buy a lot of I bought my stuff there. And I think they're a great company. They have tried over the years to create what they call the magnetic mat. Here's the problem I had with the magnetic mat. I didn't read that, which is nice. I didn't read the instructions that said if it starts to warp like this, not to use the heat gun on it. And so when I did, what happens is whatever this material is here separates here, okay? And so while, like even now, I can see that there's a bubble in underneath that. So that when I try to run this through my machine, this thing here shifts. So I will tell you what I use this for, and that is if I'm like doing a bunch of die cutting, I get this out and I set this up, okay? And let's say I'm doing one of those die sets that has like 12 pieces to make a bunny rabbit. I put all the pieces on there as I'm working, okay? And then I don't lose anything on my desk. That's not what they really intend this to be, but that's what I'm using it for at this point. I'm keeping an eye out. They keep saying patent pending and that they're trying to figure out a way to still do this. I have no doubt that at some point they will, but right now, if someone were to ask me, should I buy one, I would say no. And that's based on my experience and what has or hasn't worked for me. Okay? That's it. the magic mats come in, when you look on scrapbook.com, the magic mats come in a wide range of sizes. They make them for what is called the Cuttlebug, which is the real small Sizzix type die cutting machines. They make them for this. They make them for the great big ones. They make real, you can't see my hands, real long sheets. Okay. The ones I bought came in a package of 2, which I found to be a reasonable situation. But most of the time, my sandwich setup is this, which is the standard platform, this die adapting shim, my magic mat, which I flip, and my clear plastic. Okay, and I do try to keep flipping this. I've been using this for well over, not quite a year probably, but it's getting kind of close. And that has I haven't had to replace it. Okay, at the end of the day, again, I put all of that together, and I have a space that I can set this in, and I put this on top of this, and it helps everything flatten down. At least I think it does. Okay, if you have any questions, please leave them in the video. And again, note that I am not promoting any of these products specifically. I'm just saying that this is what I use. There are multiple machines that the Magic Mat will work with, and when you look on the scrapbook.com site under Magic Mat, they give you a very detailed list of what machines they will work with. Okay? Thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would do so. Just click on that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. You won't start getting emails, but it does help me push this information out onto YouTube. Thank you.